So where we had left off, Benjamin Franklin had pretty much established himself as a successful printer and, I guess, content producer, writer, if you will.
Media mogul.
Media mogul in Philadelphia. We're in the 1730s. We're starting to enter kind of the late 1730s now. At what point does he make the transition from, I guess, media mogul to statesman or leader?
Well, it starts off when he was just a young assistant printer. When he was only 21, he starts a little club, sort of a civic club, almost like a Rotary or Kiwanis club, for middle-class tradesmen and artisans and the shopkeepers of Philadelphia. He calls it the Leather Apron Club, sometimes known as the Junto. Leather Apron Club because it was not for the rich elite who were, the famous business owners, nor for the poor working men. It was the people who put on leather aprons every morning and opened up a shop and stood there behind the counter. And that Leather Apron Club becomes the foundation, as he becomes a successful businessman, for all of his civic endeavors. He was sort of, the club trained people in a way to be civic leaders. They made a list of the virtues you needed to have to be a good civic leader, such as industry and honesty and frugality. And Franklin was so geeky, he put it on a chart, and every week he would mark how well he did on each of those virtues. And at one point he had mastered all 12 of the virtues. He showed it to the other people in the Leather Apron Club, and one of them said, "Hey, Franklin, you're missing a virtue you might want to try." Franklin says, "What's that?" And the friend says, "Humility. You might want to try that one for a change." Franklin said, "I was never very good at the virtue of humility, but I was good at the pretense of it. I could fake it very well." And here's the important thing about Franklin. He says, and this is what he writes, he says, "I learned that the pretense of humility was just as useful as the reality of it because it made you listen to the person next to you, try to find the common ground, and that was the essence of the middle-class democracy we were trying to create."
Fascinating. And so how does this grow? I'm sure they're meeting, they're making lists of traits.
Yeah, sort of every Friday they meet, and besides making trades, they make a list of things that can improve the community. Mm-hmm. And so they come up with plans. There's the first library, the first sort of lending library of Philadelphia. I think that was like in 1731. He does a lending library. That's even before the first Poor Richard. So that was the first thing they do. Because he believed that the young tradesmen, the rich people had their own private libraries, but that there should be a free library, one that people could borrow the books. Then they do a street sweeping corps, and they do a militia. They do an academy for the education of youth. That becomes the University of Pennsylvania. They do an insurance company for widows and orphans. And, his mother is somewhat baffled because she's an old-fashioned Puritan and says, you can only get to heaven through God's grace alone, not through good works. And Franklin says, well, I'd rather have it said of me that he lived usefully than that he died rich. And I believe that the best way to be in favor of the good Lord is to do things for all of his fellow creatures that he created. And so that was Franklin's credo, which is let's do good civic works. They create a hospital even, in order to help our fellow man, because that's what the good Lord wanted us to do.
Fascinating.